Yeah, let's start off with Andreas. Can you please introduce yourself for 2 seconds?
Of course. Okay, so I made this very beautiful PowerPoint presentation. First line here is the only personal stuff we'll go through today. We're going to focus on the business side of things. I am a Swede, living in Denmark since 2016. I am married with 3 dogs, and 2 of those dogs are actually around here in my apartment. So if there's a disturbance, too sorry about that. I started out as a day trader way back. As every day trader, I started out with TA, doing candlestick analysis and messing around with indicator stuff like that. Did that for a year, figured it wasn't worth my time, so I became an order book trader, and that's how I spent the last couple of years. Quickly, I built up the capital to where my style of trading it wasn't suitable anymore, and I didn't really feel like redoing all my strategies. So I decided to go a little more long term and went over to angel investing instead. And when I started doing that, I realized, okay, when I'm doing the day trading, I'm doing no good at all to society. I'm making myself money, but nobody else benefits from it. But when I'm angel investing, I can actually help someone achieve their dream. So that became the biggest part that I did. I focused on the angel investments. And then I found crypto a year back or so. And since that, I've not been doing anything else, so to speak. If any of you have seen me, if there's any Danes in this chat, it's probably been in Bush and Play, which is a financial newspaper and channel in Denmark. And they're inviting me as a guest every now and then, and I have the privilege of talking about pretty much anything I want to. And I'll be the first to admit what I've been recommending on Bush, and if you have watched these clips, I've been quite lucky, so to say the least. One of my first recommendations was Mobileye, and they got a bid from Intel. A couple of days later, it went up 70%. I said to hold Take-Two Interactive for about a year, and then was up 135% a year. I said IPO trade BioArctic, and that was 25% the day of the IPO. And I started saying short Fingerprint, a Swedish stock, around 100 Swedish kroner, and today it's trading at 13 kroner. So I managed to get both long and short position on my recommendations right, and still I haven't given any bad recommendations. And I also said buy Bitcoin. The first time I said it was at 500. The second time I said it was at 1500. And then at 4,000 I was on Bush again, and I told everyone that I scaled down 1/3 of the position at 4,000, and the rest I'm keeping. So I'm keeping 2/3 of that position, and I'm pretty happy with that trade, even if I sold quite early, because again, I'm free rolling everything more or less, and very short time in market because that move was very fast. Okay, yeah, more or less that's everything I wanted to say. The rest is going to be questions from you guys, and I don't know if I'm going to be the right guy to answer all those questions. If there's something I don't know, I'm going to be super honest and say I couldn't tell you. I'm going to look it up for you. And if there's any technical stuff, we have our technical consultant who can answer those for you. So go ahead, ask on. You can use the chat, and you can write so that everyone can see, or you can write specifically to me as a presenter, then nobody can see the question if there's something. There's a couple of questions you don't want to, but it's C maybe. I don't know. But go ahead and ask on, and Karl here will be some kind of host. So he'll be communicating the questions to me, and I'll answer them as good as I can.
Now, of course, because we realized that maybe you need to get a little bit warmed up, and maybe you don't have any questions straight away, although I'm sure you've got many, we've also prepared some questions. So the first thing we're going to start with, we're going to begin by talking a little bit generally, at least those are the questions that we've got about, that we're going to talk a bit more generally about the fund. And after that, we're going to answer some more questions that have been brought up in our Telegram chat. So some of the things that's been reoccurring and that's been worrying some of you. But let's begin with the positives, and then we'll go more into the challenging questions. And from our sake then, Andreas, we've got this question that we've got a 1.5% management fee and then 98.5% token allocation, which is crazy if you look at the crypto market. It is very, very low. Now, I think it's really sweet that a lot of people in Telegram are worried that we are not going to be able to survive on this money, but I think that also speaks for the short-sightedness of ICO investment right now. But how are we going to survive? Please.
Yeah, again, as Karl says, thank you very much for being so worried about our economy. But the good part about this is that everyone who's actually putting money in this right now doesn't need the money at all. We can survive for years without making money from the fund. So we see this as a very long-term play. And we see that if we were to charge like everybody else, like get a token distribution of 15, 20%, in a couple of years, we're going to look back at that and we're going to say, those guys are crooks. So we might as well not make so much money in the beginning, but when we look back at this in 10 years, everyone's going to say, those guys, they did it right to begin with. And I think 1.5%, that's fair. Me personally, I would never pay very much more than that to invest in an ETF or a fund. And it's all about how complicated it is, how hard it is to get access to that market. So the most expensive fund that I personally own is an India fund. And it makes sense for me to pay 1.75% to get access to that market because I couldn't do it on my own. I can't just buy Indian stocks. I have to buy them through a fund. So I'm okay with paying that. But if I were to access an easy accessible market, I wouldn't pay more than 0.2, 0.3, something like that. So for these funds to charge these amounts is to me just ridiculous. It's not fair, and it's not going to be sustainable over time. So that's the answer to that.
And I think a follow-up question to that then is, okay, maybe we've got a long-term investment perspective here, but what about the people who we're investing for? How is this fund actually going to make money? That question came once or twice.
Okay, so everything as I see it in the crypto market is to be considered very long term. This all the investments more or less are seed stage. So that means most of these companies, they're not going to make money for 5, 10 years maybe. And if you look at this as a hit and run, you wish to pump and dump, you're gonna burn in the long run. Just look at everybody who tried to trade the Bitcoin. Sure, they probably made some money, but probably it was a better thing to just buy and hold and more or less just scale the position up and down every now and then. So even if we say that we cap the maximum investment at $10 million, so the management fee here is not going to be very much, but we do see this fund being many times this size in 5 to 10 years, and then the management fee of 1.5% would be quite a substantial amount of money. And this way we can grow organically. If we were to take 100 million to begin with, we would have to hire a lot of people, and if the business model was sustainable, we'd have to fire people. It's better to take a small amount, do all the work ourselves, see that it works, and when the fund grows, the management fee is bigger, so that means we can hire the first person, the second person, the third person. And that's how our business should grow. You shouldn't grow it like an explosion. That's just not the way to go.
All right, awesome. Now, there's actually some questions starting to roll in. And I think let's address this stuff head on so that we can get it out of the way. People have been a bit worried about the sort of organization structure of the Global ICO Fund in the Telegram, which we're committing to being 100% honest about everything because there's no other way to do that. So let's read up this question here, which is, can you tell us something about the Global ICO, so the company registration, like the investors, our letterbox at Zug, and the silent investor? And I think I'll begin with tackling that one. So silent investor, it's not unusual for a company to have more than one owner. And the fact that he's then Per-Anders Gullö is not necessarily included in the white paper is because he's not part of the operation of the fund.
He's an investor.
He's an investor. And that is the way that works. There's nothing more strange there. You can Google him. He was a TV star before, so he's a public figure. There's nothing strange there. And then referring back to the letterbox at Zug, what we have is... So what we had was a conversation in the Telegram where people were asking what type of working spaces we have. And yes, we are registered in Zug. We can prove that very easily. And yes, we are also registered at a one of these sort of letterbox organizations. But what I said in the chat was that we also had a small office, and we do. So if you compare that to Per Anders's, where he lives, we've got some office space there where we work. It's very small, but the reason for this is partly two reasons why we haven't opened up a big office here in Zug. And one is we're traveling quite a lot, and we want to help you find good investors, or we want to find good ICOs for you to invest in, which means that we don't necessarily need to sit at an office constantly. So that's one reason. Another one is, why would we dilute you with spending lots of money on a great office and a project that you're involved in, when the most important thing for us right now is to find good ICOs? We could be working out of a broomstick closet if that generated the biggest return for you as investors. And that is the most important thing for us, not to have a flashy office in the middle of Zug. Now, with that said, we will when we're up and running. So all of our ambition is to move to Crypto Valley as soon as the ICO is finished and to check that out. So I hope that this has clarified that sort of that issue. And I don't know if you've got anything more to add, and if you've got more questions, then go ahead.
No, not really. The question is clarify investors, and there's 3 of us. As you can see, the registration is a public document. It's me, it's Karl, and it's Karl's dad. And it's, to be honest with you, mostly me putting in the money right now. And I'll continue to do that. And for more or less for you guys to be able to keep the 1.5%, I'm spending my personal money and paying for everything, so the fund wouldn't need to. The 1.5% is going to be used for every due diligence work and legal fees, stuff like that. And yeah, I think that's very fair. So I'm glad you guys asked about that, because we're proud of that.
Yeah, I think so too. All right, so let's just continue with the questions that are rolling in. I think that's more important than the ones that we have. Can we talk a little bit about the roadmap? I know we haven't specified one because we're not really sure which ICOs are going to show up in the next coming year. But again, you have a plan for this.
Very good question. And the roadmap, we don't have any technique that's supposed to be developed. So there's no roadmap for when to launch something. The roadmap when it comes to the cryptocurrency investments, so 20% of the portfolio is supposed to be invested in cryptocurrency. And we don't plan to buy this the first day. We plan to look at some indications, some price indications with swings or whatever. So compare that to not buying one big position, but buying a smaller position to have a lower gap price. So that's a roadmap for the cryptocurrencies. And to us, it doesn't matter if it takes a month or 2 months to fill that position. We will not overpay for any cryptocurrencies because they're hype, and we might buy more of something that we feel is undervalued. When it comes to the ICO, the 60% in the ICO, it's so hard to say. We have a couple of ICOs we've been speaking to. I can't tell you very much about them because we have an NDA. It's not good for them or for us if it gets out there. But we plan to be fully invested within a year, and hopefully it can be a little faster. It all depends on how many ICOs get listed and how many of those are open with us, because we want to travel to these ICOs, we want to interview them, we want to put everything on cam just like this, so everyone has to put their face on there and out there, again, to make everything as transparent as possible. So that's pretty much the roadmap. It's hard to give something more concrete than that, but that's what it looks like, and we're not very worried about the allocation. We feel it's we're gonna get a very good price, especially since the market correction now. So we're kind of happy with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. Again, one of the questions that arose in the Telegram is why are we doing this? I mean, why shouldn't other people be doing this? Mark Cuban's investing in stuff. Why shouldn't they invest in that? What's unique with us? And on this aspect, I had some critique for running fitness studios, but the big person who really is the sort of mastermind behind economic investments is Andreas. So I think you should tell them a little bit about.
Yeah, good question too. And if you'd asked me a couple of years ago if I would consider running a fund or working for a fund, I would have said, no way. Why would I trade somebody else's money? I'm making way more money trading my own money. And to me, only people who are not making money for themselves would accept such a job. But this fund, to me, this is the way to scale up what I'm doing now, because I'll be able to access a team, and I'll be able to communicate with the investors of this fund. I'll get a bigger sack of money, and I'll be able to do this on a scale where me as a person would probably have a hard time as a single investor. It wouldn't be easy for me to get access to one of these big shots in the really heavy ICOs. But if I represent a fund, I'm getting FaceTime with that person. So to me, it was just it was a logical step for me. And I really like all type of capital management and trading, because I usually say that if you are very bad at your job, yeah, it's probably not going to show, and you'll probably still keep your job, at least for a while, and you'll get paid and you'll survive. But if you're a day trader and you're bad at your job, you will disappear. You'll go broke. So it's very obvious. It's really, you get feedback as how good am I at my job. So that's what I like about this industry, and it's going to be the same thing with the fund. We have to continue to deliver results, otherwise people will pull out their money, and we don't deserve your money. If we don't make money for you, you should end the relationship with us.
Now, there's something I want to add on that point, and that also goes into the aspect of the roadmap, which is that it's sure we're going to be doing a lot of heavy lifting, but you're actually also all part of this too. So included in the roadmap is that the KYC process that you went through and the platform that you got into, that is going to be continuously developed to become more and more interactive. So it's always going to reflect what's invested in. And a huge part of that is also going to be you being able to bring us information. So due diligence that you're finding out about companies, things that you think we should look at, conversations. We might want to have conversations with you about things, asking what do you think about this platform. So it's actually a big part is us, but we also want a lot of help in this. And that is where I think many eyes can see a lot of different things. And again, in the roadmap, that's going to be right after the ICO. That's going to be a really important aspect to continuously develop. So you will get more information all the time from the launch. Let's see, there's no more real questions that are rolling in. I'm going to go to a little bit more general things, because I think, actually, let's do this one too. Why don't we have a CTO?
We're not a tech company. We are a fund. And whatever we need when it comes to evaluating code, that's something that's very easy to buy. And it makes more sense to us to buy this from a third person, so it's not connected to us. And it's going to be cheaper than to have one standby at all times. A CTO is not the most important thing for us. And I can even tell you that when the fund grows, a CTO is not going to be the first person we hire. It's going to be an analyst. So it's not super important for us.
No, a CTO who costs money around the clock compared to a consultant you can bring in who can look at a different things that we bring to their table, at least in our perspective, is going to be better. Let's see. Now we've got quite a few questions. Have we started due diligence and communication with ICOs that we plan to invest in?
Yes, we have. Unfortunately, that's all I can tell you at this point, because again, we are signing NDAs. And that's both for the ICO and for our sake. So I can't give you any details, but there's a couple of them that we feel are interesting, and we'll probably go through with a couple of them. But as you all have seen also, it's not super much interesting right now. It's kind of a lot of bad stuff going on out there.
Yeah, I agree. Do we plan to open a Reddit and a subreddit for the community? What's our marketing plans? Well, we can say our cap of 10 million isn't, which is crazy, but in an ICO world, that's sort of underwhelming, which means that the way we've marketed this is that we're trying to be more personal. We're trying to communicate with the people and actually not hype this up we want to avoid these to the moon comments. Even if we want this firm to go well, we don't want to have a million people just sitting here screaming to the moon. We want to have smart people like you guys who are very interested in this. So that is definitely something I want to include. And I think there was actually one question here that I took away. That I was going to tie into this. Yeah, so subreddit and Reddit. It's going to be up tomorrow, hopefully, I believe. We've been working on that a little bit now, but it's going to be up very, very, very soon. So don't worry, that will come. Then let's continue. So we've got when you think we will start when you think the company will start the investment. Again, I think we've answered that. And where will we be on exchanges? So this exchanges question comes up quite a few times.
Yeah, and our plan is to go with the major ones. But as you know, since the token is ERC20, there's nothing stopping anyone from listing it. So we think that if the hard cap fails, we will probably see one of the exchanges listing as soon as we had planned for.
We've got some comments here that somebody in our chat issued that we have to have a CTO and it's illegal not to have one.
No, that's not right. We have gotten legal advice on this, and you don't need to have one in-house. You need to know enough about launching your code and to not make that irresponsible. But you don't need a CTO in-house.
No. So is it illegal not to have a CTO?
Nope.
No. So let's continue. No. That's the answer there. Let's see. What do you think about regulation? So what type of regulation here is applicable for us? And I mean, a quick breakdown. What have you seen? What do you think?
Yeah, we have a lot of regulation going on lately, and a couple of days ago, I think it was Monday, we had Clayton going out, the chairman of the SEC, saying we will start bringing the hammer down on ICOs. And I think this is actually something that's going to happen. I think a lot of ICOs will pay. I think if you stay away from the American market, you're kind of doing what you can. And I also think that the first thing that we'll go for is going to be the very obvious fraud ones or the really big ones. He also said this ICE company changing its name to blockchain or whatever. Those kind of things, he is going to be probably more interested in that, because the SEC, we should remember that they are regulating more or less all financial crimes in the United States and claim jurisdiction over a couple of other countries as well. So it's not just ICO they have on the schedule. So I don't think we need to be too worried about that, but yeah, we'll see what happens. Again, Asia is changing the rules pretty much every week. Europe is working, and they say the directives of the EU cooperation will be done in 2 years. And before that, I don't really see that very much is going to happen within the EU. I think most countries wait for those guidelines.
All right, awesome. We'll remind you to keep it professional in the chat. Everybody is welcome to ask questions. We will always answer all of them. So if you disagree with something, then that's fine. But
yeah, this is a market of disagreement. That's what it should be.
But let's do it in a professional manner. All right, so let's continue. Now, how will we find these different ICOs that we're going to invest in? That's a question.
Yeah, the initial screening process is not very difficult, because I'd say you can remove 75 to 80% of them just in a couple of hours due diligence, and then it's going to be a little more work. But we're as Karl already mentions, we're hoping for a community effort here, that you bring us cases that we want us to take a look at. And then we're going to choose a couple of them that we're going to actually go visit and do the really deep work on and try to formulate a deal with. So this is what we do. That's 90% of our job, is to screen these ICOs. There's not very much else for us.
Now, if we're continuing, let's talk about why we're actually, again, having 10 million as a hard cap, $10 million, that seems pretty low in this world. But we're talking a lot about fairness, transparency. How does that reflect into this 10 million?
Yeah, with the 10 million, again, we plan to grow this. We don't plan to raise as much money as possible to begin with, but we plan to grow the fund over time. That's the responsible way to do it, because let's prove that we can handle 10 million before we accept any more money or we start handling any more money. And again, it's not about the amount. It's you have to be able to make money with a small amount before you handle a big amount. That's a very important lesson if you plan to go day trading. Learn how to make 50 kroners or $5 every day before you start doing the big positions.
And this is going to be a learning experience for us as well in many aspects. I know we've got a question from the chat, which is fantastic. How is the NAV calculated when funds are in running ICOs? So when the tokens aren't available yet, or maybe they're not sold yet?
Yes, also a very good question, and that is that actually applies for the if we are holding any unlisted holdings as well. That means we will go with the internal external evaluation if it's not openly traded on the market, and those we'll try to update once a month. And if we feel that it's important to us to update it more frequently, we'll do that. But once a month, we will update and have a guidance price for all these unlisted assets. And the other ones, yeah, you're going to use. It's an open market, so we're going to use the market valuation for the listed holdings.
Let's see. All right, so we've got one question here, which is, what happens if we don't hit the 5 million cap?
Yeah, then that means that there was not any interest from the community in investing, or at least not big enough for us to feel that it's viable to run a fund out of. And the money is just returned to the investors, so you don't risk anything. It's hard coded into the contract, so the money will just be returned to you.
Awesome. Sorry. That makes complete sense. And I guess in combination with that question, how much should people invest? Should they take a second mortgage on their house, sell their cat, and invest everything they have?
My personal recommendation is that you should be a couple of % of your total portfolio should be in crypto. And me, I'm actually not following my own advice now, but it's not the fact that I invested too much to begin with. It is more the fact that I invested kind of early, and that holding grew and became a bigger part of my total portfolio. So I'm a little overweighted on crypto right now. But I still think this market has a lot to prove, and it shouldn't be more than a couple of % of your total investments. You should own stocks, and you should own a fully diversified portfolio. So do not go nuts, even if you love crypto the way I do and think blockchain is the future. It's going to take time, guys.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be a longer investment than we sometimes hope for. And along those lines, then, what was the last coin that you bought?
I'm a firm believer in Ethereum. And disclaimer again, I own Ethereum.
Most of us do.
We do. EOS also, I like these utilities. I've also been messing around with a couple of proof of stake coins, just more or less to know how it works and to be able to be a part of that as well. I think it's intriguing. Yeah, but I think that would be Ethereum.
Yeah. And do you consider cryptocurrencies to be a bubble?
Yeah, that's just the $1 million question, right? But I think most people actually agree that we have some kind of bubble going on here. Question is how to deal with this bubble, because that's the interesting thing. And we could see this every bubble we could have seen coming with the house bubble and all of the stock bubbles actually in the 2000 especially. But it doesn't mean that you should stay away from it. It means you need to be you can't be falling for the psychological traps, and you can't be totally inactive with the portfolio. You can't just be holding. You should scale your positions up and down, but you shouldn't go crazy with it. So yes, I do think we have some kind of bubble forming, but to me it doesn't mean stay away. It needs to stay alert.
And I think the questions are sort of slowing down. We've got one more here, so we don't really have that much more prepared, and I think we've dealt with most of the things that have been talked about in the Telegram. If you don't think so, then now is a good time, because otherwise we'll keep this short and sweet. And the question that has rolled in now is that you've heard that Andreas is speaking at a blockchain event in Copenhagen tomorrow. Is that correct? And what's it about, maybe?
That is correct. I'm going to be speaking at CBS Blockchain Society at 5 o'clock at CBS tomorrow. And hopefully it's going to be very much similar to what we're doing right now. It's not going to be a lecture by me, but it's going to be some kind of me communicating with the audience and try to answer what they want to hear. But I'm going to talk about how we can value decent valuations for ICOs, what parameters to look at, what to look out for, yeah, basic stuff like that. All the stuff that you guys are already doing. But I'm going to tell you more about what I'm personally looking at. So we're going to get my personal view of that. And if that's we're looking at recording that somehow, and if that's the case, and you're not living in Denmark, you might be able to see it anyways. I hope that's the case.
We hope so, and we'll definitely try to take some pictures and share everything with you. We've got one more question rolling in, so let's take this before we wrap up. I'm not sure if I understand it completely, but what would be your evaluation on ICO selection?
I think that's the question, if I understand it right, is how the evaluation, how I do it. And that's more or less what the talk about tomorrow is, and that's a 2-hour talk more or less. So it's going to be hard for me to cram all of that into one answer or question here, but there are plenty parameters I'm looking at, and all of them are kind of complicated. But if David, if you're not able to come tomorrow, I'm going to try to get you a recording of my speech, and I'll go through all of that tomorrow.
And then we've got somebody who's really hoping, Martin, who's been a good supporter in the Telegram answering questions that have been rolling in, who really hopes that we're going to reach a soft cap. Now, obviously, you hope we're going to reach a soft cap. I do too. I'm pretty sure we will. And the question is, what are we going to do now to make it more public?
Yeah, I mean the marketing is getting a bigger and bigger part, and it's partly the reason that we're being flooded by ICOs, and also the fact that ICOs are not going up 100% per week anymore, and that means there's not such a big public interest. So we've seen the interest go down as well as the number of ICOs goes up. So what we are doing, we're doing the regular marketing with the Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and Google AdWords and the standard ones. And more or less what we're doing is we're adding to this budget every day, and the ads that's performing well, we try to optimize those, and we remove those performing poorly. But this is by far the biggest surprise to us in regards to what was the hardest, because yeah, it was we thought that it would be way more of a hype around this. But I think maybe also the fact that people realize that a fund like this is not going to move on average 500% per year, because it's risk diversification and it's balancing stuff like that, and maybe that's boring to some investors. Maybe it's just the ones who've been around for a while that realize the value of this. So I don't think we get everyone who the normal investor of the ICOs.
All right. I personally don't really have anything more to add. I was talking to a reporter the other day, and who was asking, how are you promoting the ICO? What kind of bonuses are you giving, bounties? How are you going to go viral? And I said, we're probably doing the opposite towards what every single other ICO is doing. So the 1st of February, we'll see how that happens. And bear in mind that our ICO is going to be for 30 days. It's not just a one-day launch, it's a whole month. So we're going to continue to escalate this. I actually anticipate that, in contradiction to most ICOs that have a lot of traction in the beginning, ours is going to have a lot of traction towards when it starts filling up. Then it's going to go very, very quickly. So I'm really looking forward to this. And we've got one last question. Oh yeah, sorry, my bad. That is a super important question. Why do we ask about annual income in the KYC, and why don't we, for instance, ask people to scan a passport?
Yes, that's a very good one. Okay, to be honest with you guys, this is an SEC issue more than anything else. There are specific laws, and they also apply in Switzerland. You have to you go by, and it has to do with anti-money laundering, stuff like that. And if we do this KYC process, it's we have done pretty much everything that's asked from us to make sure we're not accepting funds from terrorists and yeah, stuff like that. We can actually kind of prove who invested with us. And the annual income, that's also a very good question, because one of the things that SEC look at is are they accepting money from people who could end up in a very bad situation because they invested more than they can afford to lose. And by stating the income, then we see that more or less you could be considered an accredited investor. So it's a responsible thing to do from our part. And the reason we're not doing more than that is, again, it's a process that's going to take time and money and effort, and it's not demanded from us. We don't have an obligation to do these scans, so we chose not to. So that's the quick answer to that one.
We've got a question from the Telegram. We've already covered this though, which is ask about moving to Zug and opening an office. But that question's already been covered earlier. So this is the recording that we've made now is going to be reposted very quickly. But maybe we should just talk about this again very quickly. So what we have essentially is that we will, as soon as the ICO is done, we will be moving to Zug, and we will enjoy lovely Crypto Valley and see what is there.
Yeah, and as for right now, the only thing important is what regulations we go under, and our company, the Global ICO GmbH, is registered in Zug. That means it's their laws and it's their tax system, and everything is according to them. And that's the only thing that's important. It's not necessary for our entire team to live there. That being said, my personal plan is also to move to Zug. I'm done with Denmark as well.
Yeah. So I hope that covers all of the questions that you've had. If there's anything more, then the Telegram chat is always open. So I hope you'll join that. We will repost this video for the rest of the people who haven't been able to see it. So I think on my end, thank you guys very much for joining in. This has been awesome. Let's try and do this once a week or something. So thank you.
Thank you guys. See you later.